Hello and welcome to the third video in my Anthology series about my Homebrew Dungeons & Dragons world. Let's get started. This is an anthology of Arlor, Tymanther. During the age when the gods walked the same roads mortals paved, conflict erupted among them. A war that spanned thousands of years and nearly tore all of Arlor apart. Toward the end of this divine war came an event now known as the Schism. The Schism occurred when the gods chose to withdraw from Arlor and retreat to their own outer realms, beyond the reach of mortals. It was said this was done to protect their creations and themselves, but the magic unleashed to create those realms and seal Arlor from divine interference was so powerful that it shattered the very fabric of reality. This wasn't the original plan. At least, not for all of them. 6 gods refused to leave. They had every right to remain and rule the mortal races. So, rather than allow the majority to dictate their withdrawal, they twisted their portion of the divine seal. They removed from themselves fragments in an attempt to deceive the other gods, hoping they wouldn't discover what they were planning before they had finished their deception. Each fragment held enough divine power to be worshipped as a god in its own right. But these gods, their true names, domains, and divine purposes were lost when they were pulled into this new plane. When the seal around Arlor was created, their deception caused it to fracture. Like a mirror split in two, they created a second material plane, severed from the other gods and the outer realms, using Arlor as a sort of template for their own new plane. This new plane came to be known as Staria. Though it mirrored Arlor in population, its geography was vastly different. It was entirely a world of its own, and while the 6 gods ruled it as they once had Arlor, they erased all memory of the others and reigned uncontested for nearly 2,000 years in this world. But they were vain, arrogant, and when a real threat arose, they dismissed it as a nuisance. That threat was the red dragon Tymanther. The oldest living dragon on Staria, he had survived the fracturing of the worlds when it first occurred and saw the 6 gods unworthy of rule. Why should divine power rest with them, he argued, when it could instead belong to him? Tymanther began rallying the dragons of Staria. Some joined him willingly, others were forced to follow. But together they waged war, not against the gods directly, but against their worshippers. Without followers, without worship, gods weaken. Without belief, they wither. The gods had no armies, they had never needed them. By the time they recognized the danger, Tymanther and his dragons had slaughtered over half the population of Staria, wiping out entire nations and races within this world. With the 6 gods doing nothing to aid them, many mortals began worshipping Tymanther instead. Some followed him out of fear, some out of hatred for the gods, others simply admired his power. That worship, it fed him. Tymanther became more than a dragon. He became something divine. The battle between him and the 6 fractured gods raged for years. Staria was devastated. Nearly every city destroyed, every region scarred beyond recognition. The mortal races were almost completely wiped out. But in the end, Tymanther stood victorious on the corpses of 6 dead gods. He absorbed the remnants of their divinity and, with slivers of their essence, created a new species of mortals meant to fear and worship him, the Dragonborn. They were draconic, but not dragons. Intelligent, proud, and strong like a true dragon, but enslaved, suppressed and oppressed. The Dragonborn lived under the tyrannical rule of Tymanther and his dragon empire for thousands of years. The country of this empire would be named Tymanther in honor of their god. They built cities, monuments, altars. They lived, labored, and died in his name. Until one day, everything changed. The sky split open. A sound like shattering glass tore through the minds of every creature in Staria. In a realm far removed, the goddess of magic, Oladra, was slain. Her death threw the weave, the essence of magic, the fabric of reality itself, into chaos. Across the plains, the spell plague began. In Staria, one city was ripped from its foundations and hurled across the barriers of reality. To the people of this city, it was only a moment, a blink, one instant under gray clouds and the next beneath a warm blue sky. At the time, the city was overseen by Hestezika, an ancient green dragon and one of the most trusted generals of this empire. With the chaos and the sudden change of the sky, he ordered the citizens to remain indoors and flew off to survey the land himself. What he found was unsettling. The region around the city that was once dense jungle was now a chain of islands, surrounded by a strange ocean and unfamiliar lands. But in his absence, the Dragonborn, without a dragon overseeing them for the first time in generations, acted. So many times in their past there had been rebellions attempted, plans of uprisings uprooted. But here, the very air felt different. The atmosphere of this place inspired them. They stormed the palace. They had placed every stone, they had shaped every hall and room, and they knew its secrets. The dragon and its guards had lived there. They never understood it. This rebellion took the city in hours. As Tezuka returned to find his hold on the city broken, he attempted to crush the uprising, breathing poison down onto the streets from above. But the spell plague struck again. A flash of light, shattering sound, and he was gone. Many of the rebels vanished with him, while more Dragonborn appeared seemingly out of nowhere. In the years that followed, the survivors struggled to stabilize. Natural disasters plagued the land. For a decade, they fought just to survive as more Dragonborn appeared and disappeared at random. When the spell plague calmed and the world knew peace again, they rebuilt. Slowly, cautiously, hesitant to explore beyond their city. And before they could explore their new world, it found them. A delegation arrived from Tharkanar, a coastal city of Tritons and other sea dwellers. These new islands and their sudden appearance had buried half of their city under a new landmass. But they came not in anger, only curiosity. It was a tense first encounter. A clear language barrier separated them, but intentions were made clear by both sides, and there was no aggression. The Tritons sought to bridge this divide, and they taught the Dragonborn the common tongue. They helped them understand this strange new land, and in time, they helped establish a formal government. An election was held, and the first ruler of this new land was chosen. They took the title Samrat, meaning servant in the ancient tongue of Staria. The Samrat declared, "We can never forget where we came from. Tymanther shaped us into what we are, and it will forever shape our future." The islands of their new home would be named Tymanther, and the capital city would be redubbed as Draikasha, with the old name scrubbed from their history. For many years, Draikasha was the only city. The Dragonborn population was small and shrank further as many chose to leave these islands, wanting to explore this new world and discover their own places within it. The Samrat worked with the city elders to create programs that encouraged population growth and stability. Meanwhile, they maintained close relations with Tharkanar and began reaching out carefully to other nations. Tymanther remained cautious. Only political envoys were allowed onto the island, aside from residents of Tharkanar, who they saw as their only true allies at the time. Trade with other lands was forbidden. Unsure of how foreign food, diseases, and the like would affect them, they did not want to risk wiping themselves out before they gained a proper foothold. But most of all, they feared growing too fast, letting the world in before they were ready. Still, a few nations recognized them as their own country and treated them with equality in matters of politics. the Roman Empire to the east, Pantara to the south, and Talmoran to the southwest. Others, like the Arcanian Federation and Viakin, dismissed Tymanther as little more than an independent township. Even now, Tymanther struggles for recognition and identity. The relationship with the gods of Arlor remains strained. They knew only one god in Staria, and he was cruel beyond imagining. To them, the gods of Arlor are likely no different, just better liars. But in time, Tymanther earned respect. They expanded and they endured. They have spread across their islands and now openly trade with other nations, having a particularly close relationship with the Kothiran Corporation and using them as their primary trade partner. The Dragonborn of Tymanther may have come from another world, but Arlor is their home now. Not everyone welcomes them, but they aren't going anywhere. With Tymanther finally establishing proper roots in Arlor, it has begun building new cities across its small cluster of islands. Drakasha, of course, remains the capital. Pulled from Staria fully intact, the city still bears the architectural marks of its time under dragon rule. The palace, once the lair of an ancient green dragon, has since been retrofitted and repurposed to serve the Samrat and those that he trusts. Its deep dungeons, once reserved for political dissidents and troublemakers, now functions as a highly secure vault. Guarded day and night, it holds many magical objects and relics from Tymanther's lost age on Staria. When Tymanther first arrived, the islands were thankfully rich in natural food sources. Drakasha's storehouses built to feed an entire city and a gluttonous dragon proved an initial buffer, and food was rationed carefully while a new agricultural site was established on the western island of Harang, the city of Ket. Built in a sprawling and fertile flatland, it has since become Tymanther's agricultural heart. Here, the Dragonborn carefully test what native Arlor flora and fauna they can safely consume and grow and raise in their soil. The third city to take root is Kol Bahan on Skelbar Island to the east. It is the only city in Tymanther where non-natives are permitted to live, and even they go through careful approval process. With Tymanther's strict regulations on foreign goods and exposure, Kol Bahan acts as the nation's trade and customs checkpoint. All imports and exports pass through it. With their strict borders, they also needed a place for visiting dignitaries and emissaries, which caused them to construct the Kavihet, a sprawling, elaborately built manor used to comfortably house any visitors safely away from the capital and a majority of their population. Finally, the city of Tharkanar officially joined Tymanther shortly after the Samrat's election. It has since become the knowledge capital of the nation, educating Dragonborn on the wider world and providing guidance to the Samrat and his advisors. Rather than absorb Tharkanar into a new governing structure, the Samrat struck a compromise. The city would exist under Tymanther's sovereignty, but retain its own local government and laws. In fact, many of Tharkanar's customs have since been adopted across Tymanther. All things considered, the people of Tymanther have done remarkably well for themselves. Once enslaved by a dragon god, then flung into an unfamiliar world, then ravaged by years of natural and magical disasters. And still they endured. Tymanther is stubborn. In a land shaped by suffering, stubbornness is a virtue. What role Tymanther will play in Arlor's future remains to be seen. Thank you for watching and listening to the third installment in my D&D Worldbuilding Anthology series. Tymanther was a struggle during my initial worldbuilding because I made the horrible mistake of wanting it to be from an entirely different world, which meant I had to not only come up with history for the world we would be playing in, but also a historical base for an entirely different world that none of my players were ever going to see. And that probably wasn't a good idea. But I think it worked out okay in the end, and it kind of became a fun character background area for one of my players during our first campaign, so I'm okay with it. But that will do it for this installment, so thank you again for watching and listening to this condensed history of Tymanther, and I hope to see you in the next one.